Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. You join me here at the tail end of tripod season because it's getting chillier and chillier as the month of November goes on. Barely 48 degrees outside with a pretty brisk wind. But you also join me with my very first Buick press loan, and that's the 2025 Buick Encore GX Avenir. Now I have created some content with the refreshed Encore GX here on the channel in all of the available trim levels, but I've not spent all that much time behind the wheel of GM's turbocharged 3-cylinder powertrains, either the 1.2 or 1.3. So I was excited to get behind this wheel for a week, experience what the Encore GX has to offer in this interesting package and segment. This is a subcompact SUV, kind of bridges the gap between the mainstream and that of some of the premium luxury offerings in the segment, both in terms of what it has to offer, styling, features, and also the price point of this vehicle, given this one does come in right around that $37,000 price point, including all-wheel drive and destination. So overall, over my last week of this vehicle, I've certainly had a bunch of things I like about it, a lot of positive aspects, but there's also going to be quite a few negative or small gripes and complaints I have about this vehicle, either for the price point or just the styling and kind of what this packaging has to offer in the subcompact space for a given price point. So without further ado, let's not waste your time. Take a look at my dedicated likes and dislikes here with the 2025 Encore GX Avenir. Now, as usual, starting out with my list of likes with the Encore GX, that has to do with the powertrain here with the 1.3-liter turbocharged 3-cylinder paired to the 9-speed automatic transmission. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I really haven't had all that much time behind the wheel of GM's newer 3-cylinder turbo engines, but I would say this is probably the setup and configuration I would purchase if I was in the market for one of these vehicles. So as we know, you can get the 1.2-liter turbo only with a CVT, only in front-wheel drive base configurations, and as you move up the lineup, you get the slightly more powerful 1.3-liter turbo, either with a CVT for front-wheel drive or the 9-speed automatic for all-wheel drive, and I think the 9-speed is certainly the way I would go, as I mentioned. This engine's rated at 155 horsepower, 174 pound-feet of torque, and torque really comes on down low, likely due to the smaller turbocharge and the overall tuning GM has given this vehicle. But power is adequate. Acceleration is a little bit on the slower time in terms of 0 to 60. But putting around town, doing your normal daily commute, it's really not that bad. And the 9-speed automatic is actually fairly smooth. And you don't notice it has actually 9 different speeds in the transmission. It feels almost more like a 7 or an 8 speed. But it does, in fact, have that 9th gear for cruising down the highway at higher speeds. And overall, I've not had really any complaints other than the automatic stop-start feature is a little bit on the rougher side of things. So if you turn that off all the time when you get inside the vehicle, or kind of just work around that, that's really the only negative I've had in terms of powertrain. And heck, I've even beaten the EPA ratings for both city as well as highway MPG, which is neither a pro or a con in my opinion, given these ratings are only in the mid to upper 20 MPG range. Now, my second like with this vehicle stems here from the passenger seat, and that's because here in this Avenir trim level as equipped, it comes with a mostly power passenger seat, including 2-way power lumbar. Now, as I mentioned in some of my walk-around videos, it's not that often you find power passenger lumbar on vehicles anymore, even of that of $40,000+. So the fact that this vehicle as equipped has it is a pro, and it also has a tilting seat bottom cushion, so you have the regular height adjustment, but you also have the front edge will tilt up and down, so you get a little bit of additional leg and thigh support on longer road trips, or just, however you like to sit inside this vehicle. There's a good amount of adjustment, so I really do like that about it. Now, the second reason I like the power passenger seat is because this still has the feature that is not found on the current Chevy Trax, and that is the fold flat passenger seat. So it has a manual adjustment for the back portion of the seat, but that allows it to fold flat just like that. So you can actually haul items that are upwards of 8.5 feet long diagonally inside of this vehicle if you do so choose. So really do like the power seat adjustments here on the passenger side of the vehicle, and in this segment, I think it's a pretty standout feature. Now, coming to my third like with the Encore GX, that's the fact that it simply has proximity entry on all 4 door handles versus that of only the front doors. Now, I've mentioned that in some of my other videos on different vehicles, And GM has kind of been a little bit wishy-washy on this over the years because some Chevys back in the day had it on all 4 doors. Then they kind of removed it from that of some of the mid and lower price vehicles and only kept it on the 2 front doors, where Buick and GMC typically does have it on all 4 doors. But I think even then it still varies from vehicle to vehicle. But I like the fact that the Encore GX has it on all 4 door handles because when you're exiting here at the front of the vehicle, you can simply, walk towards the back and lock the entire vehicle here using the back door handle and continue on your way all in one motion rather than having to turn around when exiting, pressing it here on the front door and then continuing on that way. I know it's a very minor thing, but I think on a daily basis, typically you're walking towards the back of the vehicle. I think it just starts to add up and makes it just a little bit easier to use. But either way, if you're getting in here in the back door and just need something quickly out of the back, you don't have to press the passenger side or front door handle and then go to the back. You can simply use it on the handle that you need. Now coming to the back seat, my next like with the Encore GX has to do with the fact that it has a 115 or 120 volt wall outlet in addition to USB-C and USB-A charging for second row occupants. Now, over the last several months of me getting press vehicles, I've noticed that typically the 115 or 120 volt outlet seems to be more reserved for that of the cargo area of the vehicle rather than here for second row occupants. Now, sure, there are vehicles that do have it either in the second and or third rows for users to access, but I think I like the fact that it's in this subcompact space. If you do need to use it, for charging devices, batteries, anything like that, you have easy access here at the second row. And then of course you still have USB-A in addition to USB-C, which I know that's a dying standard, but just in case you have that old cable laying around that you brought with you on your trip or whatnot, you can still charge it here in the second row. So again, a fairly minor thing, but I think these minor things start to add up when you want to use it. So nice to see that there is a wall outlet style plug inside of this vehicle. Now my next like stems here on the interior, and that has been the reliability as well as the layout of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Now as you can see, it took about 30 seconds or so, maybe just a little bit less, to connect my wireless Android Auto. And overall, it has been dead reliable, not one failed connection, which I really have appreciated using inside this vehicle. Now the second reason I like the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, not the fact that it's just wireless, is the layout and how GM has orientated it on the screen. So basically coming over here to Android Auto, you can see their shortcut buttons are here on the left, but GM's own shortcut buttons are even farther left on that, kind of on the very edge of the screen, including the music, device, your vehicle settings, as well as your home button. And that's typically not how Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is laid out on manufacturer screens. They make you use the on-screen device buttons to go here into the app section and then go into here. As you can see, it says exit, go back to Buick software, or use physical buttons down here. But GM has just laid it out so it's kind of always up on the screen. And I actually do like that because the digital gauge cluster does have some interaction between this page right here and what is going to be displayed on it with your trip information, gauges, trip stuff, all that, on this infotainment. So I like that about this. I know, again, it's a very minor thing, but overall, I think the Buick and GM in general does Android Auto and Apple CarPlay decently well in terms of its reliability and layout. It's just a little bit unfortunate that they are not putting this in many of their newer EVs. Now, continuing on the interior, my next like has to do with the wireless charging pad, and that's because it is actually a usable charging pad in the fact that it actually has active cooling underneath the surface so your device does not overheat. Now, I had this in there for, over an hour charging, and it actually did not overheat, and it was actually somewhat cool to the touch, believe it or not. So it has a decent amount of power. I'm not exactly sure if this is a 10 watt or 15 watt wireless charging pad, but the fact that it is cooled allows you to run your Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, set your device in the charger, and actually charge it because it does not overheat, and you actually get some usable charge after a period of time of being in the charging pad. And not to mention, the design of it is not the easiest to get to, but it's not bad. It has a rubber surface and it's fairly large, so larger devices can fit down there without much issue. So wireless charging inside this vehicle actually has to be one of the best experiences I've had in recent times with OEM charging pads inside of newer vehicles. Now, I think my last like in the Encore GX actually stems from some of the older hardware, switchgear, and interior layout and design versus that of some of their newer products, given the Encore GX went through a refresh in 2024, not an all-new redesign. So here in the cabin, you'll find, like I said, some updated design in terms of the infotainment digital gauge cluster, the steering wheel logo here for the airbag cover with the new logo. But the more you look around, the more you see GM over the last, 5, 7, 8 years or so, depending on the model that you're looking at. And I think this is actually a huge pro and an advantage versus that of some of their newer hardware. Now, specifically, some of the items that I like is there's not a lot of gloss black. You can see this is all matte plastic. It's all physical buttons, physical toggle switches. The window switches feel, I think, more reliable, more tactile than that of their newer stuff. You have, the power lift gate down there. You still have a headlight physical switch. It's not located on the infotainment, which is only a software thing. And then you come over here to the turn signal specifically. And again, this is the switchgear that GM has used over the last 5 to 7 years. You can see it goes into place. It has a very nice detent to it. And that's not something I can say about the, their newer Equinoxes or just some of their newer product over the last 1 or 2 years or so, because some of that hardware, frankly, for lack of better words, just feels cheap. And I think this interior is actually a little bit nicer than some of their current offerings. Overall, it's something to at least consider if you're looking at some of GM's new products and or the competition, is that this vehicle still soldiers on with some of the older hardware, which I personally have enjoyed over that of the recent stuff. Now, not everybody's gonna like that. I totally get it, but given it went through a refresh, it has their newest infotainment and multimedia screens. You still have physical HVAC, heated seat buttons, and the interior material usage is very, very good. The only thing I have a negative about, which we'll be mentioning here in a second, is the cup holders are gonna be on the smaller side of things, but I think having GM's older hardware and switchgear inside the vehicle is a pro for sure by itself. So I think that's gonna do it here for my list of likes with the Encore GX. Now let's get into things that I don't love so much, some of which are kind of functional issues, some of them are more subjective, but hopefully some of these can be addressed in a next generation. Now I think because all of these stem here mostly from the driver's seat and or the interior, I think I'm just gonna set the camera up there on the dashboard, overlay some B-roll for you guys, and discuss all of the minor complaints that I do have. Now, the first one I have with the Encore GX is the fact that the infotainment screen and the digital cluster almost feel like they have a backwards tilt to them towards the back of the vehicle. So depending on how you have your seat position set here, the driver and or passenger seat, it almost looks like you're looking at a weird angle at the actual screens themselves. This might help with overall glare, depending on where the sun is shining in the vehicle and or if you have the optional panoramic sunroof. But that isn't my preference. I think the screens themselves are an okay size. They do have huge bezels, which is a little bit unfortunate because there's just a lot of wasted space, a lot of extra gloss black plastic. And the screens themselves are, like I said, decently sized, but they certainly aren't going to be the largest inside of the segment. Now, my second dislike is probably one of my bigger ones here on the interior, and that's because on a daily basis, I use a Yeti 20-ounce Rambler tumbler mug, and that simply does not fit all the way down here on either of the two front cup holders. Now, I will say it holds it okay enough that I'm not too worried about it spilling on a daily basis. But if this thing's full, it is a little bit top heavy, and at times it feels like it might tip out and spill on the cabin. So if you're looking at one of these and use this style mug on a daily basis, just note it only fits about 60 to 70% down inside the cup holders. The bottom does not touch the bottom of the cup holder. So it might be due to the fact that this vehicle is Korean built and maybe Korean influenced, so they have smaller drink or cup sizes over there. Not exactly sure what the reasoning is, but just note it will not fit that size mug and or tumbler fully, but it does work barely. My third dislike is going to be the incandescent interior overhead lighting. Now, at nighttime, I'm actually surprised how bright the interior does get with these overhead lights, but they look very dingy, very dull, and typically, old school. And it would be nice to just simply have LED overhead lighting. Given it is 2025, this vehicle is a 2025 model year vehicle, and it is priced, in the upper $30,000 range as tested as equipped here. So it would be nice to have LED overhead lighting, both in terms of appearance as well as functionality. Now, my next dislike with the Encore GX stems from the seating position, and this was one I noticed immediately upon first driving the vehicle coming from my normal compact hatchback. So the armrests inside this vehicle, both on the door as well as the center console, are mounted like a little bit higher. So it feels like your arms are kind of up here. The seat can go pretty low, so you have to almost raise the seat up to match your arm comfort. And then you have to adjust the steering wheel position and kind of around the pedals somewhat, because the pedals almost feel like they're too far towards you. And overall, it's just not optimal for my, desired comfort and driving style. Now, I have gotten used to it. It's not bad. It's not, the best, certainly. But it just feels like you're almost sitting on top of the vehicle rather than within. And personally, I like a more relaxed sedan, type of seating position rather than that of kind of this vehicle where it feels like you're upright, on top of the vehicle. You have a huge vantage point. And I know it, again, that comes down to personal preference, but that is the feeling I got. Now, a couple comfort notes that I've had issues with is there's nowhere to rest your hand when you have your arm on the armrest, as the shifter is so low that you're going like this just to put your hand on the shifter, and that's just not comfortable. Now, another thing that I think larger individuals, if you're on the heavier side, might have issues with is not the physical width or space inside this vehicle, but it's the seat, how narrow the seat is itself, as I feel like I'm sitting on the outer bolsters of the bottom cushion. And I could see if, you're a little bit on the bigger side of things, you'd be sitting on top of those outer bolsters, and that would not be the most comfortable, thing to do. Now, it feels like they could make the seat wider, on both sides of the vehicle. It feels like there's plenty of width between the door panels and whatnot. It just feels like the seats are a little bit on the narrower side. And again, that might have to stem from, the Korean influence of this particular vehicle. So those are my big nitpicks in terms of comfort. Not optimal in terms of my driving position. I think the center armrest with the gear selection, you can't rest your hand anywhere, so you kind of have to just let it flop or lay in your lap. And the seat bottom, I think for larger individuals would start to become an issue. Not so much for me, but for other people, as I do notice it, and I'm pretty much on the thinner side of things. And I think my last dislike with this vehicle is stemming from, again, the older technology or just GM's regular driver assistance suite in general. And that has to do with the fact that there is no lane centering available on the Encore GX in many GM models unless you opt for the available Super Cruise if that particular vehicle has it available. So this vehicle, as equipped, does have the optional adaptive cruise control package, which is paired, I think, with the premium audio system. It is going to be a camera-only based system, so it uses the camera and some of the other, sensors up near the rear view mirror. Has forward collision avoidance as standard. You do have lane keep, but it's more of the ping pong type of lane keep, or kind of the last resort lane keep, where if you go over the line, it will direct you back into lane rather than an active lane centering system like GM Super Cruise or many other manufacturers have as standard nowadays. So I think the driver assistance suite in this vehicle is adequate. It's okay. But once you start to look at the competition, what other people are offering for the mid $20,000 price range or higher, and the fact that lane centering is starting to become a standard driver assistance technology, it's definitely something that is absent from not only the Encore GX, but pretty much every other GM vehicle not equipped with Super Cruise. So I think with all that being said, that is going to do it here for my list of dedicated likes and dislikes with the 2025 Buick Encore GX Avenir. Overall, I have actually been more impressed than I thought going into my week with this vehicle. Now, a couple of the big highlights to me is going to be how the vehicle drives, which I will have a dedicated driving review video of this vehicle, so make sure you guys stay tuned and subscribe for that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my likes and dislikes here on this vehicle. I want to give a huge thanks to Buick for sending this vehicle out for me to test and review. Hopefully we can continue to get vehicles from Buick as well as other GM brands, because I think they do offer some key standout amenities and features versus that of the competition. So it will be interesting to have that reference point so I can better, review, all vehicles that I get for a week, but certainly that from the GM side as well. So let me know what you guys think of the Encore GX down in the comment section below. Do you think it's a vehicle you would purchase? Is there other vehicles inside of this segment? Or what do you think of the overall price point of this vehicle, around $37,000, including all-wheel drive and destination as equipped? You can get the optional panoramic sunroof, which this one is missing, to bring it up near the $39,000 price point. But overall, I do like the way this vehicle is equipped, and the color combination is very, very nice. But let me know all that down in the comment section below. As always, I appreciate continued support. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I hope to see you guys in the next one.